Beyond the Scoreboard, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports, NBC family of networks. We only get the biggest people in sports because we don't bother with the ones that are not. This is a $750 billion business of sports, and as we know, you've heard me consistently about this, there is nothing bigger than the business of NASCAR, business of racing. We happen to have a huge series of races coming up this particular weekend with the guy who runs the entire Richmond International Raceway domain, Dennis Bickmeir. It's not just a regional race with an avid bunch of fans, but between the 4 races in Virginia, the most economic impact you could possibly have in any one sport reaches its zenith for the state of Virginia. It's one of the things we're going to talk about. But the guy has been running the track for a long time and has his handle on the improvements that are necessary to go forward and having a stellar race weekend, weather permitting. That's not going to be an issue. He'll deal with it. Dennis, how's that for an intro?
I love it. Thank you.
Awesome.
And that's why I got into NASCAR. I got in it because of the business of sports is so big. So I appreciate that.
Well, tell the listeners a little bit about your career first and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've right out of college, right out of the Ohio University Sports Management School, and I'm sure you're familiar with them, one of the oldest, the oldest of its kind on the master's degree level. But started out in baseball, worked a little bit in professional football as well with the LA Rams when they were still in LA, but playing in Anaheim. I think you kind of know that whole lineage, and then worked for what was the Anaheim Angels after being the California Angels, but Anaheim when the Walt Disney Company took over. But what was interesting is when I was working there, Roger Penske opened up what was then called California Speedway, now Auto Club Speedway, and one of my first bosses from when I was an intern at the Dodgers was the first PR director of this new racetrack, and just called on his PR friends to come out and help him out at his first NASCAR race. I did, never been to a NASCAR race. Fell in love with it. Again, loved the atmosphere, the big event feel, and the business. How big it was, and continued to volunteer for him, help him out. And then when he got promoted, they brought me in as the PR director out there, and pretty much been in motorsports ever since. And from Auto Club Speedway to Michigan International Speedway to Richmond now.
President of Richmond International Raceway, Dennis Bickmeir. Let me tell you, folks who are listening, the guy is old. Anybody that can talk about working with Los Angeles Rams, man, that's a leather helmet days. But luckily, he's experienced. We've generated a lot of experience from the guy in NASCAR, and International Speedway Corp is the beneficiary. Big weekend this weekend, economic impact, clearly. People hear numbers and they glaze over and probably don't understand, but there's a story behind it. If you have 2 races in your area and 2 races in Western Virginia, but probably more of an economic engine when you combine the total impact than any other sports-related business in the state. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, without question, Rick. I mean, to have 4 NASCAR Sprint Cup Series races, the biggest series in NASCAR, come to the Commonwealth of Virginia 4 times is pretty amazing. I think you've seen across the landscape, there are a lot of racetracks that would love to have 1 Sprint Cup race, and there are a lot of racetracks that have 1 that want 2. We're fortunate to have 2 here and 2 in Martinsville. So when you look at just the industry as a whole and how they travel and the amount of people that they bring to support the racetrack to put on these events, and then the fans that travel. I got a message the other day on Twitter from a fan from North Dakota who's bringing his 11-year-old son to Richmond this weekend. I mean, you start looking at all the people that are flying in. We look at the numbers from the airport. We look at the numbers from the hotels that tourism can provide us. I will tell you that Virginia Commonwealth University for the last 3 years, they've done a study in regards to sports tourism in our region. Well, we're the number 1 driver of hotel room nights. We've got a lot of big soccer events and stuff here in town, but we are the number 1 driver of hotel occupancy here in Central Virginia.
Well, and the bottom line, too, is that you can't afford to stand still. Standing still is going backwards. And it's all about facilities. And while the track has been a good old friend for a long time, you need to do some major upgrades of the area especially, too. And I know that's one of those issues that you always want to talk about, and you produce studies and do some things with great care. So tell me a little about how you're dealing with that issue.
Well, I think the biggest thing is say this all the time. We've been doing NASCAR racing here for 65 years. My job is to get us positioned for the next 65 years, and part of it is not looking just within our fence lines and what we want to do. What's our vision for the future of RIR, and so what do we want to do to the racetrack proper? What other potential opportunities are out there for? We have 1,000 acres here. What else can we be doing as well with these 1,000 acres, 365 days a year, not just on our 2 race weekends? And I think we've done a good job with that. We have a thriving consumer trade show business that generates about 200 days of activity here on our property, utilizing a lot of our buildings. But things are aged. There's certainly a lot of capital investments that we would like to make to modernize the facility for our race fans and for our consumer trade show guests. But, I think our race fans, they want more out of their experience, so we have to be able to deliver that, and the facility is one part of that. And then outside of our fence line, what are the partnerships like outside of our fence line? Public-private partnerships, aligning, working with other businesses that are in the area to improve the area around where we work, road infrastructure. We look at all those things and are looking at all those things, Rick, as we move forward and try to get ourselves positioned for, again, the next 65 years.
Well, and that's the right way to approach it, but also the respect and outreach to the business community is always paramount, and it's always also important to be relevant in your branding, developing your brand. Segway, self-serving, part of your event on the Thursday of race week. Recall developing your brand. I'm very proud of you guys as a green track, and that's one of the important parts of your brand. So talk a little bit about that conference and how excited you are to have me as your moderator. No, talk a little bit about the conference.
No, we definitely are excited to have you, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun and very informing for the guests present and those that are able to tune in as well. I think the big thing is I think we all, from a sports property standpoint, we all talk about being good community citizens. So there's a number of ways to do that. We have our own foundation, and we take part in a lot of community events, and we support our local schools. We have 3 of them in close proximity to the racetrack, and I think those are just, we need to do that. We are a big part of the community, and we want to be continue to be a big part of the community and have that high level of attachment. But the NASCAR Race to Green and the green opportunity around our race weekend is something I think is very unique. NASCAR's done a good job in the area of green and sustainability and use it as a great opportunity to educate our race fans. We're going to do that. We're partnering with them. We are the NASCAR Green race that's coming up this weekend. But like what we're going to talk about on Thursday is what are we got to put our money where our mouth is. So whether it's our recycling efforts, and I'm talking us, Richmond specifically, composting, building a garden, planting trees, what are all these things that we can do to think about our sustainability? We're actually going to do a sustainability audit, again, partnering up with VCU School of Engineering. I'm anxious to get that audit. I want to know where we can improve, where we can be effective, and then what else can we do to kind of take that message to other sporting events that come to the Central Virginia area, go bigger even throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, throughout the Mid-Atlantic states, nationally. I wanted to be held up as an example of these guys. They've looked at sustainability and they're attacking it, and here's how they're attacking it.
Dennis Bickmeir, President, Richmond International Raceway. Last question for you. One of the things that I've noticed in my travels around the country as an old dude right now to reflect back on stuff is that you want to make sure you don't take each other for granted as partners, old married partners. We're 65 years in Richmond, 65 years of the track. The Richmond area, a great community, can't take racing for granted. You have 2 races there and 2 races in Western Virginia, and the economics are fantastic. And on the other hand, you can't take the fans for granted. So your next step is to make sure that you have a great experience for all concerned. Next 5-10 years, what's the track look like? What's racing in Richmond look like?
Well, I think the track, I think what we need to do is address some items on modernizing the facility. So I think, that goes to seat comfort, that goes to connectivity, that goes to ingress and egress, all those things that the people want, the comfort level that they want when they go to an event. I think, Rick, we look at what our company, International Speedway Corporation, is doing with Daytona Rising and that unbelievable project in Daytona, and I can't wait until we officially kind of relaunch that in January of 2016. But I think for all of us, that's a game changer. I say that's not just a modern motorsports facility; it's a modern sports stadium, and I want to get us in Richmond positioned for something like that. I would love, again, vision, goals, all those things that to be able to deliver a venue that is going to hold up for another 65 years. I think is the goal. So I think all that comes back to continuing to develop our fan base, keep our core fans happy, re-engage some of our lost consumers, get them reintroduced to the sport of NASCAR and then to our facility. And I think if you can, you get a modernized facility, you get what NASCAR is doing with their industry action plan and their strategic initiatives, and if you can connect all those dots for fans, then again, I think we're going to be set well for the future. I will say one last thing that you mentioned, the connectivity to the business community and how important that is. It is the ultimate for us, because you're right. I don't want to be taken for granted. I don't want to be, RIR's been here for 65 years. They're always going to be there. No, we need to continue to reinvent ourselves. We need to continue to, solidify more partnerships here locally and have that local support to really lift up what we're doing for our fans and for the business of NASCAR here in Richmond.
With Dennis Bickmeir at the helm, Richmond International Raceway and racing in Virginia is in good hands. Rick Horrow, sports professor, Beyond the Scoreboard, Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports. Be back in a couple of minutes.